CSR reports, and we have made a research to assess the impact of businesses on the ocean. Then we have created a framework so about a dozen businesses have contributed to the creation of the ocean framework, and nowadays there are more and more businesses that adopt this tool. So this tool aims to assess a business's impact on the sea, and once it was implemented, we thought to thank the first businesses that have committed to reducing their impact on the ocean. We created a label called Ocean Approved. Obviously, this name is in English. It's in English, and it emphasizes our ambition. We have worked with huge groups, major groups like Suez, that already uses our tools. So we worked with major groups as well as small businesses, both in France and abroad. We would like to thank Bleu for their will to deploy the label around the Mediterranean. Nowadays, many businesses are involved in this project, and they work in very different sectors, like cosmetics, for example. So some businesses are connected with the ocean. Their business is connected to the ocean, but not necessarily. So whatever you, the industry, whatever your industry, you can, you have a connection with the sea, and we have a tool to assess your impact on the ocean. And now you can use it too. Now I will leave the floor to our two guests. Bertrand Camus is the CEO of the Suez Group. Can you tell us how Suez, what Suez does towards the, as regards to the ocean? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? 1 2 1 2. And here we are. We can exchange our microphones. Good afternoon, everyone. The ocean framework is good news for a group such as Suez, since we are strongly committed towards the ocean. We've been committed for many years. Our operations impact the ocean, and we manage waste. We do different things. We tackle different topics. So this tool can be crucial for us in the Mediterranean, but also in Asia. We are part of an alliance for eliminating plastic waste, and this tool can also be useful for water management or rainfall management, since we work here in Marseille with the water infrastructure. So there's been progress these past years as for our connection with the sea. So at first there weren't any water treatment infrastructure. So I think there's some facilities were built around the end of the 90s. So water treatment facilities were built, and now we are more focused on biodiversity. We try to assess our impact on biodiversity, and we have developed many different tools, for example, to assess our impact, our noise impact on biodiversity. So that's what we do, and it is crucial for us to have a long-term perspective along with governments and NGOs, and we also need to work with the world of finance that is slowly integrating this approach in the budget plans. We also focused on carbon with the carbon tax system implemented at the European level, with many different topics will be tackled in the future. So that's the reason why this framework is crucial for us to be able to interact with all these institutions. We will apply this framework to our business. There are 44 indicators, and half of them are relevant to us. Some indicators are not haven't been used yet, but we will work on them so we can integrate them in our work as well as in the products we offer our clients. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bertrand. And yes, congratulations for taking new indicators into account. Patrick, you work for CGM. Thank you very much for being here. Can you tell us more about how your group integrates the issues relevant to the ocean, and can you tell us how you use this framework? Thank you very much. So before talking about my group, and I will be straightforward here. I have 5 children, 4 daughters, 1 son. My 4 daughters like surfing, and I am telling. There's an initiative called surf riding, and I think if I'm telling you that is because this Congress is about the future generation. It is crucial that major groups invest, and there are many volunteers here, many groups, and we have mobilized not for the present, but for the future. At the beginning, at the beginning of my career, I was a diplomat. I was working in diplomacy, and I have decided to turn towards industry, towards a commitment for biodiversity. I am from Marseille. I work for this group, the CGM, a local group, and I see there is a strong commitment. I see it every day. And yesterday afternoon, the president held a speech to open the Congress, and he mentioned our group. He also said that our group was ready to join another label that is supported by the French government as well as the European institutions. It's called Green Europe. So this, the president mentioned a French group that will take part in this label, and there was a round of applause. So it shows that this commitment is sincere, and it makes sense that our group joins the label because we want to move forward. And along with the CEO of Suez, we work in different sectors, and in the group has mobilized different departments in order to make progress. In my sector, there are boats, so we work with boats and containers. There's a lot of plastic. How can we manage plastic waste? So this is a direct example of what we can do, and we have carried out different actions at the same time, and we have different projects from environmental transformation to other initiatives. These initiatives are crucial. We will pursue them along with the French government and different institutions, especially NGOs and foundations. As a shipper, as an actor of the shipping industries, and unfortunately, as the pandemic showed, our supply chain has a strategic role because it makes it possible to transport goods from one point of the globe to the other. So we have a strategical importance, and 80% of goods are transported buy containers on the sea. We are pioneers in green washes. We've taken different initiatives, but we have decided to start research. And we have undertaken a significant reduction of waste, and we're trying to turn towards LNG, and the French government has acknowledged that it is very important, and it will help us reduce our gas consumption, but it won't be enough. Now I am mentioning the transportation industry, but there are places where there is offer, there is demand, there are different factors to take into account. Demand is modest, the demand is different, and nowadays consumers exert pressure on the industry. As for offer, as for a group, but especially at the level of our group, there people are gathering, people are acting, are doing things. Consumers are asking for a change. So we need to take these different factors into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see that the Minister has arrived. The floor is yours, Madam Minister. We'd like to thank you very much, of course, for being with us as we were constructing our reference frame and our label. I'm so sorry for arriving late and missing part of this subject, but I've turned up as soon as we were talking about sea transport, and it is a subject which is on my desk every single day of the week. And we will have many opportunities when we have future meetings, opportunities to talk about this again. So thank you very much to the Foundation for this wonderful initiative, saying Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them, are a roadmap that we must all follow in every walk of life. When I arrived at the head of this ministry, because for 30 years we didn't have a minister for the sea, in the past I'd worked on development and French-speaking nations, but so I had worked in the name of France to work on those 17 SDGs. And so having a minister for the seas means that we've got our DNA, and our DNA is going to be SDG number 14. And that means that everybody has to be aware of it, that SDG 14 is our roadmap, it's our goal. And this goal, we have to all shoulder that goal and work towards it. Sea transport has been mentioned, but there are all kinds of other players in the sea industries that have to understand the importance of the energy transition. And on a larger scale, economic transition linked to the environment, every single company, every single business has to be involved. And I would like to thank you too for being at the helm of this initiative and showing the way to all other companies who want to work to help the oceans, either by coming to ask for the label or following the guidelines, etc. It really is important, because that's the only way we're going to make things change. There are always going to be everyday players who are transport companies, fishermen, for example, those who manage marine protected areas, or those who are involved in maritime tourism. They, for many years now, have been aware of the value for them of participating in this major change, in repairing the damage that has been caused to our oceans, in contributing to heal the oceans. So above and beyond our label and SDG 14, I would like to say that before the Barcelona Convention, in June 22, the French president said yesterday they were going to have a meeting. I imagine it's going to be before the end of 2021. For the time being, it's going to be called One Ocean Summit. Let's see if that is the title that's going to be used. But the idea behind that title is that we are not going to wait June 2022. We need to hear the ocean's voice already. and start constructing pathways with coalitions of different players, and we want to do that before the end of this year. So we've got a great opportunity to get everything moving forward, and I would like really to invite you all to be participants, especially the Fondation de la Mer, which is involved on a day-to-day basis in these subjects. A final word, perhaps. I just want to ask all businesses to get on board. And I also want to get all researchers to get on board, because we do realize that we still need to have factors that will, and information that will help us to make the best choices for tomorrow. We don't know our oceans well enough. We do know the damage that we've done to the oceans, but we do not know enough about the problems in the ocean or of the solutions. So businesses, and the state, of course, and all NGOs and the research world, all together we can work to prepare this event in December, which is going to pave the way to the June 22 event, because now we're in the month of September. In under a year's time, we will already have our action plan. We will already have the funding so that we can act very, very quickly. And I'd just like to say that all parties involved in the maritime are on board, and that's really exciting. One often talks about overfishing, energy transitions, with the shippers. Over 90% of goods are transported on the sea, so this is a big challenge we've got to tackle. All of these economic players are moving. Perhaps they're not moving fast enough or not moving further enough, but it's a beginning. They are moving. And this is this dynamic movement that we need to encourage. I apologize once again for arriving late, but I know we have to stick to the schedule here. But it was very important to me to be able to come and say that I am with you, I'm by your side, and I'm listening to what you have to say. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I'm now, for the second part of our session, which is devoted to the deployment of the label around the Mediterranean, I'm going to ask François Diacca, head of Plan Bleu, and Paul Revira, representing the Regional Activity Centre in Barcelona, which is focusing on consumption and sustainable development. So these two activities are going to show, or these two entities are going to show how they are behaving in conjunction with businesses to disseminate this label for more sustainable activities. So François Guérin from Plan Bleu is going to take the floor first of all. Hello everybody. Oh no, I'm Paul Revira. I am working for a SwitchMed program which is headed by SP RAC. It's a bit of a strange name, I admit that, and we're based in Barcelona. So first of all, I am going to explain to you how SPRAC is going to help businesses and has already started to help businesses around the Mediterranean, and how that organization is going to help to deploy the ocean approved label that the Fondation de la Mer has just presented to us. I'll just try to get to grips with my presentation on the PowerPoint. Okay, we'll forget about the PowerPoint presentation. So, my organization has a report program created in 2019, Switch Support Program, which is based on 3 programs which are already being steered or co-steered by SPRAC. They want to capitalize on these 3 programs which all support the creation and the development of sustainable business around the Mediterranean, mainly on the eastern and southern shores, from Morocco all the way to the Lebanon, but also in Italy and in Spain. The main tool that the Switcher Support Program is using is a website, in fact. And on this website, the three programs, the beneficiaries of the three programs can have easy access to enhanced visibility about their eco-businesses that they have created thanks to the three programs, but also they will have access to clients, to suppliers, to colleagues, and to backers. Very important that. Now I'm going to present one of the three programs for the Switcher Support Program. It's called SwitchMed. This is the biggest of the three programs. SwitchMed had a first phase between 2013 and 2019. It was very successful, so that meant we could have the second phase as of 2019, and which is currently underway. And it is based on an integrated approach. So what does that mean? Well, in our eyes, an integrated approach means helping the eco-entrepreneurs to get trained all the way through to launching the project and having access to the market and having access to funding also. So how do we go about that? We help the auto-entrepreneurs, but without an entire ecosystem, things are a bit difficult. So what we do also is we guide, we advise states, the states where we work, to help them to put in place the proper public strategies. We also have a website which helps the eco-entrepreneurs in everything I've just mentioned, training, incubation, but also we give them an opportunity to assess their own environmental, social and economic impact thanks to digital tools that we make available to them. So the same website also grants access to the eco-entrepreneurs, but also to the trainers who can train all of the eco-entrepreneurs on a personalized basis, and also the backers who have their own accounts and they can go and look for which eco-entrepreneurs they're going to fund depending on their own criteria. Oh good, my PowerPoint is on the screen. Better late than never. And it's the right slide, what's more. So, SwitchMed 2 is the current phase, has a sustainable blue economy component which endeavours to create and develop sustainable enterprises through that procedure which I've just described, and it also includes a new tool which enables the eco-entrepreneurs to build their own business models in the blue economy and their own business plan. So that's how we came to work closer with the Fondation de la Mer. We have seen some very powerful synergies from both sides, and we are currently working on a partnership agreement that will make it possible to our eco-entrepreneurs to benefit from guidance by the Fondation de la Mer, or to have the OSHA approved label and to be supported by that institution. We also want our eco-entrepreneurs to benefit from the expertise of the Fondation de la Mer, because the trainers come from the foundation and they have plenty of expertise. And thanks to SwitchMed and the Switcher Support Program, we give visibility to the successes of the label. So we'll communicate about them, and there will be many success stories. Thank you very much for listening. Hello everybody. So I'm very fortunate in having the right slide behind me. My name is François Guerquin. I'm the director of Plum, Bleu. So we are involved in another action plan for the Mediterranean. So there are many interfaces. We've been hearing about them since the beginning of the session. And the activities in our program are all interfaces. So SAP-Iraq, which Paul talked about, is really there to offer an interface between businesses and governments and official bodies. Plan Bleu has a similar role. It was created by France to help the plan for the Mediterranean in terms of its interfaces. Everything which is transversal, we have a series of tools which we use. Earlier on, someone was saying to me, well, that's fine, we must get the youth involved because we're talking about 2030 to 2050, so that's for the youngsters. At Plan Bleu, we are working on future evolutions and wondering whether or not each player what each player can bring to the table. That's something which we do in a network. Our work is typically interfacing. So, and let me give you some examples. The Fondation de la Mer initiative is really significant to us. At Plan Bleu, we have a network which is lacking, and that's a network of businesses. We work a lot with NGOs, we work a lot with scientists, we obviously work a lot with the government because it's the government who gives us our mandates to work, but we're not working enough with businesses. And we agree with the Fondation de la Mer that without businesses, we cannot have sufficient impact. And so it really is pressing that we work with businesses. The role of Plan Bleu is to work on these interfaces, and we're delighted to do that with the Fondation de la Mer. I'm going to talk about a specific tool which is at everybody's disposal. So we are developing a regional observatory for the Plan Bleu around the Mediterranean because big major institutions around the world are developing their observatoires. It's a big theme. You talk about biodiversity or you talk about economics, and it's also geographical. Either you're going to talk about Africa or Asia or Europe. Yet there are international agreements which are already taking care of the seas. There's the Barcelona Convention for Europe, but there are other ones all over the world. There are natural areas where one can hail politicians and governments about what's happening in their seas. For the Mediterranean, we have observatoires which already exist around Europe and in Africa and in the Middle East, but there wasn't a Mediterranean observatory. Some things had been done, some thought process had been launched. We weren't sitting here in the sunshine. We have been working, thinking about things, and we have provided information that helps decision making. So the site is called obs.planbleu.org. I thought that the slides were following me, but no, they've got lost again. But we have a modern tool. Anyone who wants to participate can participate. Absolutely anybody can bring their data and anybody can use that data. And we can layer different types of data from different types of players. When I started this work on the observatory 3 months ago, I started to look at the information we had on sea turtles and also on marine protected areas. And we see that in the Mediterranean there are some key zones that are not covered by the marine protected areas. We did a similar exercise with Posidonia and where boats can moored according to rules, where they can't moor just whatever they want to. And there are zones where there is no data and we don't know what's going on there. So what we're suggesting to do with the Fondation de la Mer is to involve businesses in this notion of an observatory. It's an environment and development observatory. I'm talking about interface, and there is an interface between development and biodiversity. And so that's why we really want to work in partnership to fuel a tool that will help people make decisions with access to the right information, and it's up-to-date information. In the past, we would print assessment reports every 10 years, so you've got information every 10 or 15 years. But with today's technologies, we should be able to steer what we want to do on a day-to-day basis. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much to our different speakers. The Minister had to dash off to another round table. I hope you're all convinced now of how important it is to work together and to get businesses on board. And I hope you're all going to be ambassadors for these tools that are being developed and that are all kicking off. This is a world first. I'm not sure whether you've realized this. We really are proud in France here to have been the first to adopt SDG 14 into the domain of business. And so very proud about that. And we really do hope to remain the leaders in the sustainable development of the seas in partnership with the state and NGOs. And I want to thank you all for being here. We really do have high hopes for the future, and with Plan Bleu we imagine that we'll be able to monitor day by day the number of businesses that are going to sign up. I'm not going to reveal any figures, but I think we should really fix ourselves a goal for the number of businesses that we've managed to get signed up before Barcelona, perhaps. So we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much for listening to us, and enjoy the conference. And thank you all four for your presentations. Apologies for the problem with the PowerPoints, but thank you very much for making your presentations. There is going to be an event on French Guyana in a few moments, so let's invite the next team up to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the French Pavilion. For we will hold a session about finance and biodiversity. My name is Aurélien Giraud, and I'm responsible for sustainable finance within the Ministry of the Ecological Transition. And today I am also the moderator of this panel with two prestigious guests, Nathalie Layani, the Director of Sustainable Policy for Caisse Dépôts. Good afternoon, Nathalie. And Philippe Zawati, the CEO of Mirova. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I give the floor to our guests, because we only have 30 minutes, I will be straightforward. And maybe I'll give you a more general information and figures. Here I see people, passionate people with passion, or maybe the weather is too hot outside and they'd rather be here, but I take it that you are committed to today's theme. So here are three figures. First of all, 100,000 billions of euros. You've heard this figure many times. So 100,000 billion is the value of services rendered by nature to man. So that's the value of services rendered by nature to man every year. So through pollination or through the natural regulation and purifying of waters. Just to give you an element of comparison, the annual GDP of France is 2,000 billion euros. Here's a second figure, 120 billion euros. This is the for biodiversity. So as we know from recent literature, we would need 800 to 900 million euros allocated to biodiversity. So we're far from reaching this target. And this amount is, so if we take the amount of money saved by French people in 2019, it is higher than the amount of funding allocated to biodiversity. So now let's me give you another figure, 6,000 billion euros yearly. Those are the this is the value of AIDS funding that damages biodiversity and nature. So maybe these figures will inspire you to make a change. So what we have to do now is to reduce any funding that could affect biodiversity. So we need to change funding, and that's why the state acts at the European level. For example, since the European Commission has launched an initiative for preserving the biodiversity and forest, the EU Commission is also active on the fiscal tax front. So biodiversity will be discussed with a taxation lens. And now there are initiatives taken at the French level. There have been amendments to the finance code, so there are stronger obligations of transparency for finance. So a new decree was adopted and makes it an obligation for financial players to publish a report about their impact on biodiversity, and they need to align their portfolios with biodiversity objectives, especially those of the Convention for Biological Diversity. And we ask finance players to be more transparent about identifying risk in connection with biodiversity. So we need to know more about the nature of this risk. Beyond the measures we can take, the government can take. So today we will hear Nathalie and Olivier. So what we want to know is we want to know what financial players, private and public financial players do. And we also want to know what measures are taken day by day. Many commitments were undertaken. We've heard about it a lot these past days, but we also want to know what the results are, regarding the reduction of our impact on nature and biodiversity. Without further ado, I give the floor to Nathalie. And Nathalie, we know that your organization is very active about environment and environmental reporting, very active on in the biodiversity fields. We don't have a lot of time, but can you tell us how your organization organizes its priority in the field of biodiversity? Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be here. So as Christine Lagarde said yesterday, we might wonder what is the role of finance in the field of biodiversity. What can a financial institution can do? And let me comment on the figures you mentioned. And I have a slide, and my figures are a little bit more optimistic than yours. But we see two major challenges. We need to make a reorientation of our funding so that we can meet our biodiversity targets, and we need to get rid of funding that harms the environment. But we also need further funding for projects that will promote and protect nature. For players such as Caisse de Dépôts, that is a public organization that manages private funding, private saving, we need to use our role as a shareholder to influence big corporations so that they can integrate biodiversity in their targets. we can influence economic players. We manage 200 billion assets. We have the potential to make a difference, especially if all players join forces. Secondly, we need to mobilize our funding and locate them to field players at the local level, so we can create positive projects that will have a positive impact on biodiversity. So in order to make a change in our funding, we need to assess our impacts. So what can be funded can be also steered and reoriented. That's what we heard yesterday with Christine Lagarde and President Macron. And now I want to tell you how in our group, and we are with our branch that is active in this field for a long time, so together we've developed tools for assessing the impact of businesses on biodiversity. We want to assess the pressures exerted on biodiversity, and we worked with financial players. So with Carbon 40, this is a business that is focused on climate and biodiversity, and together we've developed a tool called the Finance GPS. That is the global biodiversity score for businesses. And I will give you an overview of this tool because we don't have much time. Feel free to check the website. So this tool makes it possible to have an overview of the business's value chain. It aims to get an overview of their turnover, of their procurement, and so we can have an overview of their impact. And then we use a tool called Globio, and this will give you an overview of the impact of businesses on different pressures, that is land pressure, pollution, or climate change, and you can also see their impact on water, on the ocean. Here's another element, another issue that can help us bridge the gaps. If we want the states to take a commitment, to be committed to protecting the earth, we need a new assessment tool, and here it is. It is called Moon Species Abundance, and this tool can help us determine the level of preservation from 1 to 10. And it is based on specific, you can see make the assessment about specific areas. So this tool can make an assessment of local impact, and it can help us measure the impact of economic activities on ecosystem. We tested this tool that was developed according to specific indicators, specific metrics, and we make a comparison with different, the impact of different stock exchange companies. So if we invest 1 billion, our portfolio has a value of 200 billion. But if we take 1 billion euros and 600 businesses, we can conclude that the impact of these businesses is equivalent to the surface of Paris. So the soil artificialization covers the same surface as Paris. That is 130 square kilometers. And there's also a static impact on activities. There is also an impact on different flows. So it and then we get. So if we take all these elements, we get 900 football pitches. So that gives you an idea of the economic impact. of the impact of businesses. So now our objective is to make businesses change their practices. And now I would like to present you the commitments taken by economic players. So here, the sectors that are most exposed based on the analysis we carried out, what you can see here is that the sectors that have the highest impact on biodiversity are chemistry, fossil fuel sectors, food, the food industry, and insurance. The insurance industry has an impact too. So what do investors do about this? They formed a coalition called Finance for Biodiversity, and they made different commitments. Next slide, please. So we take part in this coalition, and we have taken a commitment in, and we are active in asset management, and we also contribute to bridging the gap, as I already mentioned. So we assessed our impact, and we pledged to reduce this impact, and we asked all the businesses that are in our portfolios to start aligning with the commitments that are being negotiating. So we try to exert pressure on them so that they can reduce their impact, and we want them to tackle 2 sectors a year. We also pledge to stop investing in real estate, and 100% all our investments are artificialization free, and the same goes for forest.
The other type of engagement, of commitment we've taken up is to do with funding in favour of projects with a positive impact. So this is using industrial wastelands, it's investing in circular economies, investing in the reduction of pressure on aquatic stocks, and we are using 3 billion over several years for that, and we will be helping all of this along with training and also with research. So a final comment, just to say that these players are in the alliance and they can go even further, so it would be very useful to have an international framework, and an ambitious one at that. And this is my final slide. We are calling for negotiators of COP15 to identify an ambitious framework aiming for 30% of land which is preserved, and reducing the amount of land which is used up. And there we go. I'm afraid I've overstepped my mark in terms of the time, but that's where we are so far. Well, thank you very much, Nathalie, for your presentation. But take your time, and you too, Philippe, take your time. We do have a few minutes here. Let's. I think 1 minute here or there won't break the bank. I'm going to hand the floor over, or hand the remote control over, in fact. Thank you, Nathalie. 20 billion, that's the figure we're talking about. 1 billion is spent very, very quickly. Thank you very much for those figures. They're rather scary figures. So we're talking about portfolio management here, and now I'm going to turn to Philippe, the CEO of Mirova. Mirova is a subsidiary of Natixis, which is a subsidiary of the Banque Populaire Caisse d'Épargne group. So there's quite a family tree there, and so they're very familiar with the financial scene. So the floor is yours, Philippe. Good evening, everybody. Private players obviously have an essential role to play also. When I'm talking about private players, I don't only mean economic players, private finance, we need massive investments, as Nathalie's already pointed out. And so today, very few of these big sums of money that are in savings, we talked about a lot of savings here in France, for example, very little of that is directed into protecting nature and biodiversity. I'm just going to sum up Mirova in a few words, just so that you know who it is. We're part of the Natixis group, which I created back in 2014 with some other people, and we wanted to create a player that was exclusively dedicated to responsible investment. So every time we make an investment, we make sure that environmental and social impacts are taken at the heart of any decisions, and it's also reflected in our portfolios. And recently we've got some new developments which I'll come back to. So we have a lot of assets. You can see the figures up there on the screen. 24 million in billion rather in terms of our active our assets. We can do a certain amount of work, but it's really important that we have other players drawing the market, pushing the market, and as the we have to do proof of concept, as the software developers say, and it is possible to invest in a responsible way with big sums of money, and you can still be very effective, and you can make a good return on your investment as well. So there are 120 people in Paris, Boston, Luxembourg, Singapore recently. The goal of our company is written in our mission statement. For 2 years now, we have been a company that describes very, very clearly, above and beyond our research and our other activities, we can identify what our goals are. We have described in this mission statement, which is in our statutes today, we said that finance has to be an actor in transforming the business model and in enhancing the ecosystem, and we have to have a holistic approach to all decisions that we are taking in terms of research, investment, commitment to businesses that we invest in, and also influencing the community, the financial community. And what we're looking for is to have a positive environmental and social and economic performance level. So what does that mean? Well, looking more specifically at biodiversity, what does it mean? Well, in terms of biodiversity, we have come up with a roadmap. We designed that 3 years ago, and it is based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is investing in nature-based solutions. So reforestation, rehabilitating damaged soil, defending the oceans. This is a business model which is being developed, and we have to manage to translate that into investments. That's what we're trying to do. We want to clear the way, if we can, clear a path in these areas to show that it is possible to inject capital into projects and businesses that are offering nature-based solutions. And I'm going to give you a few examples of that later on. Our second pillar, our second priority in our roadmap follows on from what Nathalie's already said this afternoon, and that is data and methodology. We have to be able to measure, given that our decisions are nature-based, we have all these kind of portfolios with bonds and everything. We have to be able to measure them. For a long time, we were working on the carbon footprint. That was quite difficult. A lot of silly things are being said still when you're measuring the carbon footprint of a portfolio, when you don't take into account, for example, different solutions and how that can reduce future emissions. So there's a lot of complexity there. And when you come to biodiversity, this complexity is multiplied by 10. It really is much more difficult. So we too have been working on measurements and methodologies for measuring. That some wonderful work has been carried out above and beyond the carbon footprint player, which we've already mentioned. Other players are also developing tools, and databases are being created and enriched to measure companies' impact on biodiversity. And those readings and those tools will enable us to analyze all portfolios and to have investment strategies that take into account those components. In the same way as today, we could say that a portfolio has been aligned to 2 degrees, and now we'll say no, all our portfolios have 0% deforestation in them. So data and methodology is a pillar which is very, very important. The third pillar for our strategy is public-private collaboration. We want to work with different coalitions, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So let's take a look at those 3 pillars again. Investing in nature-based solutions. Since 2013, we've invested 500 million euros. That's a small amount, given the portfolio, the amount of money that we are managing. However, today, this is a class of asset, a category of assets that barely exists in all of these assets that pension funds and insurance companies talk about. You have more and more focus on climate, but there's not a lot yet devoted to those nature-based solutions. There are a few players in the market who have decided to invest in this way. But it is kind of a small scale. That's because the asset's just not available. And then there's also the point of view of prospects. It's a bit like the chicken and the egg. You said there's no money because there are no projects. There are no projects because there's no money. But you have to start sooner or later. You have to put your money on the table and create these projects. That's what we've been doing for the past 6 years. And we have pipelines of projects which are being developed all over the world in developing countries also to foster the sustainable use of land. We restore land in Colombia, Nicaragua, in Bhutan. That's the first choice, that's sustainable land use. Then we've got the blue economy, that's building up the mangroves, protecting the oceans. And the third is payment for ecosystem services. Of course, carbon credit, but that goes much further than that. And we notice that companies are committing to zero carbon by 2050, and they have to compensate, therefore, their emissions. So those are just a few examples. Here are a few more examples on the screen now. Nature-based solutions. We've got an investment in Bhutan for hazelnut trees, and there's a fund which L'Oréal is involved in investing in nature protection projects as well. Certain priority, data and methodology, we've already talked about that. You all know what that is. It's just to say that we have a consortium of investors, AXA, BNP, Sycamore and Mirova, who have all committed to purchase data, which is a very important thing. For data providers, if they don't have any clients, well, they're not going to develop their data services. So we have created a call for tenders, and we're going to be buying data. And to wrap up, I would say that there are a few very structuring initiatives in public-private collaboration. There's Finance for Diversity. There is also the TNFD, which is an international task force that aims to set standards for measuring businesses' impact on nature. It's a bit like the TCFD, if you like, which is in the field of the climate. So here we've got the TNFD, and it is to be launched before COP26 in Glasgow. And in France here, we launched an alliance. It's called the Natural Capital Investment Alliance, with 2 big partners, HSBC and Lombard Odier, to create a class of asset that can be invested in the future. And that's where I'm going to stop. Well, thank you very much. Before we proceed, I'd like to thank our speakers, and thank you for being so very efficient. And thank you for being so very clear in your presentations. Before we hand the floor out, open the floor, I would like you both just to say a couple of words. If you could give recommendations, because in the room we have people who are financial experts, but we've got some people who are not financial experts with us today. So could you give us 2 recommendations, perhaps, on a recommendation for citizen savers who want to act but don't know how to go about it, they don't know what to invest in, they don't know how to manage their savings or what to invest in. So that's the first recommendation that you would have to help so that they can help protect biodiversity. And the second recommendation on an institutional level for the experts, for the institutions who would like to commit in a very credible manner in some approach to protect biodiversity in financial terms, of course. So you've got 15-20 seconds for each recommendation. Thank you very much. Trouble with the microphone there? Okay, that's fine. That one is working. Obviously, a message to consumers and savers are to ask your banker what they're doing with your money. So don't hesitate to question your asset managers or your bankers. Which funds are they investing your savings in? What they're doing with your life insurance? And you can access that information and you can find out whether that money is being invested in responsible funds or not. And you have huge power as a saver on that front. That's the first point. And the message to institutional players, well, I talked about that at the end of my presentation. It is more or less for COP15, we need an ambitious framework so that we can roll out our projects and be active to protect the climate. We have to be pragmatic, 1.5 degrees, we have to work sector by sector. To face up to this emergency, we need something which is equivalent to biodiversity, although it's a bit more tricky because it's far more systemic. So there were some points which I mentioned. One is really important, and we really do need to know more. We have to identify which are the harmful sectors where we should stop investing. Thinking of palm oil, pesticides, genetically modified organisms. I'm sure you can't exclude businesses or companies in their entirety, but there should be some activities where they should no longer be working, and there are some subsidies which should stop. So we need red taxonomy. Is that what you're saying? I've taken note of that. Well, me too. Can a saver ask what is in their different saving portfolios? Yes, of course they can ask what the bank's doing with their money. And the second, for the institutions, or the professionals, I would say we all have to understand that the situation is absolutely urgent, and it's also very complicated. So we can't just count on others. We all have to play our role. If you're in the financial world, you can be often accused of being an enemy or being the baddie and the cause of many problems, and it is often true. However, we do hold a part of the solution. Each of us has a tiny section of the solution. No matter where you are, there's always going to be something to help the situation move forward. So stop hesitating and just get in there. Well, those will be the closing words of this panel. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We just have to act. So Philippe has encouraged me to say, if you want to know what's happening with your saving money, take a look at our latest report. It's online, and you will know exactly what is being done with your money, with your savings. Thank you very much, Nathalie, Philippe. Thank you very much for being in the audience.
We're going to talk about corals. They need our mobilization, and I am delighted to introduce this session with prestigious speakers today. Sophie Bocard, the General Director of the overseas, and I am the Director of Water and Biodiversity. So here and now, Bérangère Abba, the Secretary of State for Diversity, will take the floor. Madam Minister. Good evening. I am delighted to be here, and I would like to thank the Fondation de la Mer for organizing this session and for supporting this platform and initiative. Good evening, all citizens, researchers, all supporters of biodiversity, all of you committed to protecting biodiversity. This is the time to come together. The President has made a very strong speech, a very interesting speech yesterday, and so there are many people working towards this objective. Coral reefs are among the richest ecosystems in the planet, and they're also the most threatened by human activity. So let me give you a figure. 0.015% of oceans. In this small portion of the ocean, we can find a lot of different species, and this ecosystem give us many benefits. They protect our coast from erosion. They offer also benefits in terms of tourism. And France hosts 10% of worldwide coral reefs. So this is the fourth country in hosting coral reefs. So our action to protect coral reefs has a long-term perspective. And IFRICOR has published an overview of the health of coral reefs, herbarium, seabed, and mangroves in France. And we have also published a summary since the report was last published in 2015. So nowadays, today, 70% of coral reefs are in a good state, and 60% of French coral reefs are degraded, unfortunately. Consequently, we need to pursue the deployment of our protection objectives. So 30% of the French surface, we need to protect 30% of French coral reefs. That was a really ambitious target. It was welcomed at the international level. And so we need to protect this. We need to build measures for protecting coral reefs. In order to do so, we need to work in close contact with players, with everyone, with all the stakeholders in different sphere of actions. And our overseas territories have set a priority, that is to fight against invasive species. We work together, for example, with the Polynesian Authority, with whom we carry out joint works. And we should make rapid progress very soon. Beyond protection, we need to reduce the pressures exerted on coral reefs, and we have reached out to the OFB to identify chemical substances that have the highest impact on coral reefs. We expect results very soon at the spring 2022, and we will focus our action to the reduction of the sources of impact. We need to get together, we need to act, we need to gather as many people as possible. we will talk about the platform Sos Coral, launched this year with the Fondation de la Mer. It will take a part in the funding efforts, and we also were able to fund the restoration of coral reefs in Martinique. Many efforts have been undertaken, and we already have a positive result. We have committed to funding the platform by doubling the funding received until now, and the state has contributed to the funding of the platform and has given 200,000 euros. This money isn't comparable to beauty, to the benefits given by coral reefs. That's why I am here committed to listening to and to look for partners of action. Thank you. And unfortunately, I've got many things to do, but I will keep a look on what's going on. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Minister, for these inspiring words. And now we will continue, and we will talk about scientific mobilization. This is quite obvious. If we want to start with things we know, with concrete data, so we need to focus on data to use science. We need to know what we do, what we measure, what we can share with others. And as the President said yesterday, it is crucial for the next step. So we need to start with what we know, with science. And now I give the floor to Mrs. Cabrier, a neurologist that will talk about science. Catherine?
Hello. As has already been said, the French government has committed to protect 100% of the coral reefs by taking a look at the state of health of the coral reefs, the sea meadows, marine meadows, and the mangroves. And that a report must be edited every 5 years on their state of health. It's a very ambitious project, but of course it corresponds to France's responsibility in terms of coral reefs. 10% of the coral reefs. What we haven't said is that the reefs are in 3 oceans. So there's a huge diversity in terms of morphology, the species. And we have mangroves and the sea meadows. They're all very diversified in French waters. And there are the ecosystem services are worth 3 million euros, and these systems are a source of livelihood and riches and wealth for the overseas territories. But they are very, very vulnerable, as we know, particularly in the French overseas territories. They're very vulnerable to human activity, mainly to wastewater, which is not processed before it's cast out into the sea, to the sediment that comes from urbanization of the coastline. We also know that they are subject to climate change, and we have seen coral bleaching on several occasions in the seas, particularly in 2016, but also there are illnesses as in the French Antilles. So this summing up is part of an analysis which one could make of general degradation. The most latest IPCC report says that 1/3 of coral is under threat, and a lot of the surface is going to be reduced, and that the reefs that will survive will probably be very, very different to those reefs that are in existence today. They'll be less rich, less diversified. And so our report here is in line with those general conclusions that are made around the world. So the 2020 report by IFRICOR was drawn up with many experts from the overseas territories. We had about 100 people working with us, and we have analysed the figures from 20 years of observations. We have about 1,000 observation posts. 200 of them were used for these analyses. These analyses show that, or that the results of the analyses say that the situation is rather mixed. There are huge differences from one region to the next, and also within single regions and within single territories. And that's not surprising, really. If you take a look at New Caledonia, there are 15 inhabitants per square kilometres, and there is 26,000 square kilometres of reef. In Mayotte, there are 700 inhabitants per square kilometres for 1,400 square kilometres of reef. So the scales are completely different. We have two extremities. We've got territories which have very little human activity, with no density of human activity. We've got 70% of the reefs are in good health, and that good health is a long-term state. So far, so good. And the sea meadows and the mangroves are also in a quite good state, quite good condition. But on the other hand, in those regions where they've got a dense population, we're talking about La Réunion, Mayotte and the French Antilles. There, 72% of the reefs are damaged. We've also got the sea meadows which are declining, and mangroves which are under extreme pressure, and they are very, very damaged in some regions such as in St. Martin and St. Barthélemy. What can we do? Well, there are three avenues for exploration. We can reduce climate change. So that means reducing anthropic pressure, and we can also innovate. We can innovate in terms of tools, but also in new ways of looking at things, new ways of governing, so that we can enhance the resilience of these coral reefs. So for French overseas territories, that means that we need to reinforce the protected areas. There are some protected areas, but we need to strengthen those. We need to use nature-based solutions. We have to reduce pressure, of course. We have to include these ecosystems in policies, in development policies, fishing policies, water policies. We also have to continue our monitoring. We need to enhance our monitoring networks, and we have to gather more knowledge. Solid knowledge is going to help us to fine-tune our management policies, and we also have to heighten awareness of youngsters, elected representatives, and we have to inject more money into it all. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say two things. On the 15th of September, there's a webinar which will go deeper into these subjects because we haven't got very much time. They'll talk about the scientific results of this study. We'll broadcast the date again on internet. There's going to be a summary on the interactive stations, and we are going to see a fisherman from the Reunion Island who's going to give his view on evolutions on the coral reefs and how the marine environment is changing and has changed.
Oh, la mer, c'est comme une ville. C'est comme une ville dans la mer, apparemment.
Information about our Visio conference.
Moi, Sol Théophane Henri. Oui, à 79. On a commencé la pêche. Pour commencer la pêche à l'âge d'environ 10-12 ans. Une pêche sous-marine, premier pêche à la Réunion. Pêche sous-marine, c'était à moi. En 1956, une petite pêche. Poisson lavé, poisson, moule, corail, joli corail flair, tout en net complet, tu manques pas rien. Auparavant, le corail était joli corail. Maintenant, le corail, comment corail, là, le corail, corail noir. Il vaut rien. Avant, la mer, c'est comme une ville. C'est comme une ville dans la mer, auparavant. C'est joli. Maintenant, fini. Comme on a fait une poubelle. Comme bien, fini sale. Le corail fini rouillé, bien couleur. Le fond est sale. Dans les années 60, 70, là, la lagon a comment dégradé. Là, des oissins. Où il est maintenant? La pie. Où les petits crabes? Le carabosse, le humain, où il est? La pie. Moi, c'est comme un béton, c'est comme un béton. Alors, on met 10 km. On nous a dit, où il y a les moules? Plus de moules. Là, pas de moules à Marseille, là. Il y a crié, corail, coquillages, lavé, joli coquillages. Où il est? Mais Napi, Cordomores, où il est? Napi. C'est malheureux, mais auparavant, à La Réunion, quand il y a des fumiers, ça ne sert pas les arbres, ça ne sert pas pour du chimique. Parce que La Réunion en pente, la pluie ne tombe pas sur La Réunion. Quand la pluie tombe en voyage, ça ravine partout. Donc ça va. Le ravin qui fait, il y a marre tout, il va à la mer. Après, il fait toute la ravine la coulée là. Allez en mer, allez sur la mer, c'est le sable. On va tout pas se rêver. Quand il met des produits chimiques, nous la mer, ça pousse. Mais pas besoin de c'est le petit PC qui détruit la lagon. Pas besoin de dire, ah, c'est le petit PC qui détruit la lagon. Non. Alors, au contraire, on est pour protéger, nous, pas pour détruire. Parce que ça, c'est notre métier.
Well, thank you to Pascal Chabanet for that video. Excellent video. Yes, thank you very much. So, we've got a lot of work to do, and we presented that in two different ways, a scientific approach and then an emotional approach. But I think the conclusion is the same. We all know that things have to be done now. We have to just roll up our sleeves, and that's what we're here today for. Okay, let's move on now to talk about the role of citizens and businesses. You've all seen this, and as Catherine has already very well said, these coral reefs are a treasure, and it's difficult to understand how much they're worth. We here in France tend to think that when you ask for protection, it only comes from public funds, but that's not always the case. I would really like to focus on this second part of our presentation, when we see that citizens and businesses can get it on board, and they can lead wonderful projects, and the state can help them, because what we're going to see today is the state equaling all the donations which are being made. So now I'd like us to hear from Sabine Roux de Bézieux, who's going to give us some feedback about the Sos Coral Platform. Well, I had tears in my eyes when I was looking at that fisherman who was listing all of the species that have disappeared, the coral which has all been bleached, and the sea is now full of waste. It's become a dustbin. It's really moving. We can see these videos and listen to these testimonials day after day. I don't know. I'm always moved by them. And that can be one of the drivers which encouraged us to make the Fondation de la Mer some 6 years ago. There were a lot of people. So the Fondation de la Mer was created by business leaders, scientists, representatives of the state, NGOs, artists too. It's the foundation for everyone who loves the sea, whether they're specialists or not. People who want not only to cry when they're watching the videos, but who want to get up and do something. And that's what we did, working with the French initiative IFRACOR, which works to protect coral, working with different ministries in the government as well. Ministries can work together to realize great things. And we also worked with organizations similar to our own, and that's how we've managed to construct this participative platform. It's called SOS Coral. SOS Coral is the word in French. There's a website, and you can click on it and have a look. So this is an initiative which was co-constructed by the Fondation de la Mer and IFRACOR, and our goal is to encourage businesses and citizens to get involved. We can all do something to save the mangroves, the sea meadows, and the coral. It's really important because in we have French overseas territories, And for us who live on the mainland, it seems like they're a long, long way away. But when you think about those overseas territories, it's one way that we can have an impact around the world. France is the only country in the world where the sun never goes down. It's no longer the case of England, as Queen Victoria used to be able to say. Now France is the only country which has that honour, but also that responsibility. And so by acting on the coral reefs, at the other side of the world, through the French overseas territories, we are doing something for the planet, for the globe. And if we can develop methodologies and technologies that will be exemplary and set an example for our neighbours, well, that will be wonderful. So it's very, very important for us to actually act. And our platform, it's a public-private initiative. It's a program that will heighten awareness of citizens to the problem of coral reefs. It will teach people also. It was launched on the 8th of June, that was the World Ocean Day, by 2 French ministers, and there are 14 programs in the initiative on all of the overseas territories and regions that we have. There's a nice map on the website. These are programs which are for observation, because observing is really important. Scientific research is so important. You can only protect something if you're familiar with it, if you studied it. The second phase will be, after garnering the information, we have to protect it and restore the coral reefs and the mangroves and the sea meadows. We need to sow fresh seeds, build them up again, and enhance the resilience of certain species of coral. And these are areas in which French researchers lead the field. Ifremer has done great work, and we can be very proud of French research and the work that is being carried out along with others in a collective manner. French research, the public authorities, NGOs like us and foundations like us, citizens and businesses. Now I'm going to talk about the businesses. They're very, very important. The idea that we have is that when there's a challenge in the marine space, for example, with corals, mangroves and the sea meadows, then it's the state that needs to act. But the issue is so big that we need to all pull together. The states have several levers, the businesses have several levers, they have a financial lever. I'll talk about that in a moment. They also have a lever of innovation. Businesses are naturally innovative. I think, Olivier, you mentioned this. We need to invent new methodologies, new technologies, to plant new corals, to plant mangroves. And so we need public-private partnerships to be able to do that. And we really do need to work hand in hand. The Sos Coral Initiative was launched 3 months ago. It has already met with great success. There are 2 projects which have been completely funded. There's one in New Caledonia, which you'll hear about in a minute. That's a project to educate youngsters, because the coral in New Caledonia is in good condition. However, we have to educate the youngsters so that they share the responsibility. It's a great project. There's a video on it which you'll be seeing in a minute. We're also working on restoring corals in Martinique. Martinique is in a red zone on the slides which you saw earlier on. And so that type of coral is where certain types of fish love to live. So if you like these pretty fish, then you have to make sure that their home is protected. You'll see on our website that there are tens of other projects, and I'm sure you'll find one project which you'll fall in love with. New projects will be added all the time. We've got researchers in Polynesia, a wonderful project from Polynesia there, with scientific research at the best of what the French can offer. Projects which are very solid. We have a scientific council. Pascal Joanneau, who I'd like to commend, does a wonderful work with Carlos Cucini. Fabulous work to identify the best programs. We don't want to get involved in any old project. It's all very nice to look at the coral and make sure it's pretty, but you have to be careful where you put your money. So SOS Coral has a guarantee that its projects are all going to be very serious and founded in science. SOS Coral is a project full of hope. It's a project that is already funded, and the Minister already pointed out that the state has committed to this project. Every euro that's injected to Sos Coral, the state will inject the same amount. So we don't have a ceiling. If you want the state to put its hand in its pocket, then you put your hand in your pocket. Every euro which you give, the state will give the same. So it's exemplary. Civil society can work hand in hand with the state. Thank you very much to both of you ladies there, and to your ministers, of course, for having defended this project. And let's watch the video now.
Bonjour. Donc l'association Paladalique est une association calédonienne, environnementale et sportive. Elle participe au réseau d'observation des récifs de Nouvelle-Calédonie, donc en acquérant des données sur la santé des récifs du Caillou. Et elle participe également à l'éducation environnementale au travers d'animations scolaires et autres événements tout au long de l'année. Donc pour fêter ses 10 ans d'existence, Paladalique a souhaité créer une exposition itinérante.
Alors l'objectif de cette exposition est double. Donc premièrement, continuer nos actions de communication, et deuxièmement, réduire les inégalités d'accès à l'information. Donc parce qu'on va le déployer sur toute la Grande Terre, sur les îles et au plus profond des tribus. Alors ceci sera rendu possible grâce donc, au soutien de la Fondation de la Mer et de l'IFRECOR, qui finance, grâce à la plateforme Sos Coral, les outils de notre exposition, les outils pédagogiques.
Nous vous remercions.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
So thank you very much for those lovely pictures. We talked about science, we talked about citizens and businesses. Now it's time to talk about elected representatives, because to succeed we'll all have to work together, and we need to work with our councillors. Let's remember right from the very outset, when IFRECOR was founded, it worked hand in hand with government, and we need to count on our local representatives, elected representatives. That's how we're going to move forward. So for this section of our presentation, we're going to have 3 speakers who are going to have things to share with us. Maud Lèvre, who's going to come up right now. She's from Ecomer, Delegate General. Thank you very much for being with us here today. We've got Sylvie Lemay, a new ambassadress for the environment, who is with us. And we also have, hidden somewhere in the audience, right on the front row, please come, we have the Minister of the Environment from Polynesia, who is also paying us a great honour of being with us. So I think we'll have a minute to listen to him as well, because the coral in his neck of the woods is in good condition. So I'm going to hand the floor first of all to this young lady. I'm just taking off my mask. It'll be easier to speak clearly. In the name of Ecomer, I would just like to thank the Minister of the Overseas Seas zones. Our association is a bunch of local collectivities which for 30 years has been taking care of the ecological transition and has invested since 2012, along with IFRACOR, in a national competition for players in biodiversity and local elected representatives on all questions that pertain to coral and ecosystems, mangroves and sea meadows. So it's important to us to promote this competition, and we have been doing so since 2019. We want to recognize the work of local elected representatives. It's essential to protect the ecosystems, to have the councillors on board, and as we have seen in the presentation, the state of health in these very, very densely populated areas overseas and the state of the environment is rather worrying. Public policy is, in its entirety, is of interest to IFRACOR because, as the Fondation de la Mer has already pointed out, everything ends up in the sea. And that's what we've all seen, and I think that's why we're all here today, to launch this, because it's a really important subject here, and it's been it's one of the founding elements of this event. When at the opening of this conference, France's president mentioned that everything ends up in lagoons, on the coast, in the water, trickle water, used water, which is not treated to the treatment systems, and it all ends up in the sea. So local collectivities have a key role to play in protecting coral reefs and mangroves and sea meadows. And these collectivities are essential, and we work with them to ensure that the situation is going to be improving over the next coming years. I'm going to hand the floor over because I'm here with Charlotte, who works with me, and she, for the past 3 years, has been managing this IFRACOR palm. Let's see what she has to say about this palm competition, a bit like the film festival in Cannes. Yes, as my colleague has just been saying, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the IFRACOR palm. It's the 9th edition because last year, of course, we didn't have one because of COVID. However, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of our palm, and we are launching a teaser film to celebrate all of the winners of our palm from previous years. And at the end of the celebration, we will be launching the 10th, another palm competition, an IFRACOR palm, and at the end of the ceremony, and elected representatives, local players from the overseas territories can compete for our palm. They have up until the 30th of November 2021 to send their application.
You can launch the video.
l'objectif que nous avons d'aires marines gérées à Sainte-Luce.
We need to pursue our efforts, and we're waiting for projects. And now over to you, to my next speaker. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'll be brief. First of all, I am delighted to be here, and you know, I'm moved because we talk about the ocean, and I can feel that we can take part in the life created by the ocean. And over a very short period of time, you know, I love swimming, so over a short period of time I have visited the same places. But and over the time, I've seen a change in coral reef, a very dramatic change. This change has occurred rapidly. We are losing. The biodiversity is in decline, and that's a reason why I'm delighted to be the president of the jury for the Plum contest. And I would like to congratulate the elected representatives because they've shown commitment in these initiatives. They're the one who can implement projects, and they can also raise awareness about what's going on among the general public. Moreover, elected representatives can also exert pressure on all those who damage environment. We've talked about wastewater, and it is a responsibility which falls under the responsibility of local representatives, but we also need to sit at the table with farmers and talk about agriculture. I am looking forward to discovering the nice project that we will receive this year. And we have a unique opportunity to go backwards and see what's been done. And I hope that this contest can contribute to making progress. I am delighted I'll be delighted to talk with the winners. I know there is one palm for each ecosystem, so there's one for mangroves, one for seabeds. You can have a look on the website of AfriCorps if you want to get more information. If you want to apply, you can do it now until the end of November. So whoever wants to apply will be very welcome to do so. And who knows, we may meet at the end of the year in a face-to-face meeting to award the palms. Thank you. That wasn't planned, but the minister of Polynesia is here, so if you want to meet the target of 100% coral reefs, so that wasn't planned. But now let me give the floor to the minister. As Madam Minister said, as well as many speakers, corals are rich reservoirs of biodiversity. I totally agree. However, beyond biodiversity, coral reefs play a crucial role for our islands. We have 84 islands that are 1 meter above the sea. So protecting the reefs equals ensuring the survival of coral reefs. Indeed, coral reefs you are fuel providers with materials. So if the sea level rises, coral reefs will have a huge role in protecting us. I think we have 10,000 square kilometers of coral reefs. In 2018, we created a concept. You know, in Polynesia, man is nothing without nature. We live with nature, we live in nature. And in the management plan of our marine area, we want to improve the protection of our coral reefs. And we want to do this because we want to protect biodiversity. There's more biodiversity in a few reefs kilometers than on the whole France, on the whole central France. But again, this is a crucial issue. This is crucial for our future. What if we can't live on our islands anymore? I don't think we can settle down in the Massif Central in the center of France. So our coral reefs are still in a good state, except for one, because that's where the nuclear test took place. But let's not talk about it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister. So we should all join forces, work together. And the best way to do it, to show the example, you know, in our minister, we all work together. So that I'll give the floor to Sophie Broca, and she will hold a speech now. She will make a presentation. Yes, I'm going to make a presentation. There will be a birth. Indeed, in 2018, we launched a consultation with the overseas, and we created the Blue Book of the Overseas. In 2018, we promised to release the Blue Book, and we did it. And I would like to thank the Museum of Historical Museum. The director is here tonight. So we made it. We made an ultramarine biodiversity measurement tool. As we said, we can protect what we know. And as with biodiversity, here we make a map of each ultramarine environment. This photo, this picture isn't static. It can evolve. It is available on a platform accessible to all citizens, scientists, associations, and why not businesses. And everyone will have the opportunity to put pictures of the marine environment that represent 80% of biodiversity, as we said. And Mr. Minister, you were right. 1 square kilometer of coral reefs in Polynesia holds more biodiversity than the whole territory of France. Coral reefs are a treasure. We need to protect them, so we need to know them better, to protect them, and to respect them. And now you will see 2 short videos about this tool we created, this assessment tool that will record everything, that will record the state of ultramarine environment, and I hope it will show the progress we made thanks to our action. So this biodiversity tool needs you, that's for sure. And now I will conclude this session about coral reefs and the overseas. Let me take this opportunity to apologize for Sébastien Lecornu, the minister in charge of the overseas. He couldn't be present tonight, but we have here the Minister for the Ecological Transition, and along with our partners, we were delighted to present you these initiatives. So I would like to thank them, and everything we've presented tonight says that with coral reefs we have changed our mind, we have changed our idea of the overseas. The overseas hold a treasure. They are located on 3 different oceans. They hold a huge diversity, but that's something we don't hear enough in schools, in businesses, or within families. We don't hear about it enough. The overseas hold 80% of French biodiversity. So now you know, we've said it many times today, but the overseas hold 10% of coral reefs worldwide. It holds 20% of worldwide biodiversity for marine environment. The overseas holds many species and 7 million hectares of forest in French Guyana, with a remarkable bird population. The overseas hold our treasure, our common treasure. And finally, the overseas take a leading role. They can lead the way, they can pave the way and lead us to anticipate extreme events they're already subjected to, like the rise of sea levels or other extreme weather events. The Minister for Polynesia said, we are nature. And I believe that if in the Pacific coral reefs are in a better state, it is because there is an invisible link, an invisible connection between the locals and nature, and maybe they're more protective of nature and ecosystem because they love nature. So I'll be brief because Barbara Pompili will soon be here with us. So everything was really well explained. We talked about the services rendered by this remarkable ecosystem. But let me say that everything we've heard tonight was really useful. And as we said, we have this remarkable capital, a treasure, but it holds obligations for the state to have suited tools. The state must protect our resources, our water resources, fish resources. We must educate the generations, the new generations, so that they will more active on environmental issues. We must count on the next generation, but in order to do this, we must educate them. So it is our responsibility to do so. Elected representatives also have pressing responsibilities. They must focus on the territories, on positive practices. They should set up networks, sanitation networks. They should turn towards nature-based solutions. However, we respect elected representatives, so they must respect nature. Finally, I do think that businesses also have a role to play with virtuous finance and paying attention to carbon print. And to conclude, I would say, so Victor Hugo said, it is really sad to think that nature talks and that humankind doesn't listen. So you are here tonight, and that proves that we can listen to nature. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here with you this evening. You may not have been here at the previous meeting, although many of you perhaps were. It was a thrilling meeting all about coral reefs. But here we are on the French Pavilion to launch something new. You might find it strange to organize a launch meeting for a website, but this isn't any old website, not only because it's being launched by one of the departments in my ministry, but it's an answer to a strong, crucial need if we hope that the ecological transition is to succeed. We are going to be able to identify and understand good ideas and then support them. I'm sure that you here don't need me to tell you that the environmental stakes are very, very high. But we can see, sadly, when there is a discussion and the wrong information is used, false information is used, then the discussion is biased and it can lead to collective decisions which are not moving in the right direction. Our role, we who support the ecological transition, which has to be very concrete and ambitious, it's our job to ensure that information is available and that it has been checked and that it is reliable. And that is essential if we hope to share good information and if we hope that everybody really can play their role. And so this is the job that our website will be playing. Its role is to make available to everybody studies, surveys, contact details and lists of organizations that can be contacted on any subject pertaining to sustainable development or the ecological transition. So we are not the first people to launch such an initiative, and our website isn't supposed to be replacing what already exists, but the role of public authorities and of my Ministry of Ecological Transition is to make all citizens, to give all citizens clear, reliable, checked information that represents the different points of view. And also information that is independent from any public promotion or private promotion. So this is not the site of the Ministry of Ecology, where we describe what the government's doing. No, this is something different. This is to reference knowledge. So we have been able to make this expertise available, and it is also designed to weave together a web, a network, if you like, of experts. So for each subject that we broach, there are going to be links on the website which you can click on to learn more about all of the different subjects which are mentioned. It's going to be a simple layout, easy for everybody, and then you can go into more complicated pages if you want. You can click to follow webs to other websites. So I wish a long life to this new website. It's already up and running. You can visit it already, and it is intended to be very lively and to evolve thanks to everybody's contributions. The CGDD team, and I'd like to thank them very much for this successful event. The team is on standby to make sure that it's a huge success for everyone and it answers everyone's needs. So thank you very much. Enjoy your visit to the website and enjoy the rest of this convention. Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for those words to introduce our evening here, presenting the portal, and for inaugurating this information portal. So now it's up and running, it's live, and on the screen we're going to show you some screen captures, etc., etc. So let's illustrate what we've already heard by showing some of the main pages from the website. And to do this, I'd like to call to the front Nathalie Tessier. She's a project manager in our department of the ministry, and she's going to show you around the portal. Thank you, Madam Minister. I fear you have to run away. But you're very familiar with the website already. You don't really need a guided tour. But let's hand the floor over to Nathalie now. Thank you to the Minister for being here. I've got some bad news from a technical point of view. We can't actually connect to the link. So we wanted to do a virtual demonstration, but we're going to instead do a bit of a static presentation. Fortunately, we had a PowerPoint presentation in the wings. So as the Minister has just pointed out, we want to be able to provide information to all citizens, but also to economic players, councillors, and anybody who is interested in the environment and sustainable development. It is a source to go to find information and other sources of information and the details of people who will enable you to act and to get involved. The information is very clearly displayed, it's reliable, it has been checked, and you can check it too. The users expressed that desire when we were asking what people wanted to find on such a website. People were saying, give us information that we can check ourselves. And if we want to go back to the source of this information, we want to be able to do that. We want to get the statistics, the raw data, the reports, which enable you to display your information. So that's what we've done. And we have decided to show several points of view. If there's an issue where the jury is still out, we don't want to hide anyone's point of view. We want to explain all points of view through information and through validated knowledge. You can see on the screen here there are two pictures. This is the home page, and you can see there are two versions. On the right of the screen, that's the dark version, and on the other side, that's a light version, because we really wanted to respect the environment, and the black pixel consumes much less energy than a white pixel does. So that's the first gesture towards respecting the environment. The second gesture, you can see the little icons there representing each of the different themes. Each illustration which pertains to our environment is a vector, it's an SVG, and so it's a lighter picture in computer terms, and it can adapt to the different styles of screen that you may be looking at the site on. So we've looked at the home page. I would like to move on to the next page, but oh yes, here it is. So at the top of the page, you can see the latest news, some snippets about the hot topics of the day. But we're not trying to be a media. We don't want to accept that role. We're not a news channel. We are focusing on knowledge. We want to be clear. We want to add clarity to the debate. As well as the banner at the top, you'll also see presentations of the 8 themes that are broached. They're quite classic themes, if you like. The first one is biodiversity, of course, and then climate, risks, health, the economy, society, town planning, and assessments. So we cover a broad range of subjects pertaining to the environment and sustainable development. And then there's another section which explains our abilities to open up the horizon. It's inviting people to be curious, to go and look left and right at what they might find. So what can we find on our different pages? You have these main subjects, and they are gathered together in 61 sub-themes, or that will be the number at the end, and rather on 61 data sheets with 2 ways of accessing the data. There's a simple access. In a couple of minutes you can become aware of the main challenges in a theme. So that's the kind of shorter version. You can see it in the bottom left-hand corner. Then you also have the possibility of going deeper into your research. If you want to look deeper into a point, you go into the next section to find out more. You can learn more. And then the two final headings, which enable you to reach the source document and to go even further than that. Either you can identify the different actors in the field, or you can identify other websites which will give you further information. And there's a final heading which enables you to read more, and you can read more documents about that particular theme. So here you can see on the screen there are different data sheets. You've got one on the circular economy, for example, and it's very informative. There's one on air pollution, which you can see on your screen now. This one's particularly interesting because we have computer graphics there. You can see very simply sketched out. That can be repeated on social media. And we've got some other bonuses there. You can see those little square, this is rectangles in pale colours. They're all pollutants. And if you click on each rectangle, you'll find information about that pollutant and how it can impact the environment. And then you can go down to a second or a third level of information, depending on how much you need to know. Here we have the same page, but in the light version, or a bright version, and here you have the resources. The goal here is to have an economical type of website. We haven't got videos that start loading every time you open a page. However, there are technical solutions that mean that you can look at a website with all of its videos, etc. And so that's what we do whenever it's possible. So we have the theme sheets, and here we have the latest news. Here, that's what you can see on the screen right now. Some snippets of news also, always with links to the source. And there are also other editorial formats which are developed because we really want to adapt to an audience that will have different desires. So a short snippet of news will give some context on a hot topic, but it might you might want to look deeper into that and have more resources. So there's the second format, and it's called like a file, if you like. And there's a third format, which is called the essentials, and I'll show you that at the end of this presentation. And the goal of that is to be much more concrete, and it really will help you to understand the challenges in everyday life.
We have made a publication about reducing the heat in the cities. So here's a presentation of the theme with a summary of what's at stake. And you can also find resources about this theme with a summary of 2 webinars. And we also try to present, to show you what reality is. So we provide information along with context. So we also present local actors. Here's another page about wildfire. And this page is articulated around one figure. 4,200 wildfires are started each year. And so these figures helps us catch the attention of the public, so that they can get interested in the rest of the page. And now this is an infography, so you can see a graph about water and water environment in France, as well as the way they're used. So I've shown you these different pages to show you that we want to tackle varied, diversified topics. Here, for example, the page talks about businesses committed to biodiversity. There are different resources mentioned on the same page. There are also other snippets of information about biodiversity, but that will tackle this issue under a different perspective. So we will talk about the reintegration of birds into nature, and more specifically vultures into nature. However, there will be other examples that will be that will come more as a surprise. We also talk about economics. So what are recreation activities in the forest worse, for example? And we can also tackle the topic from a third angle with the following question: how can we compensate the loss of biodiversity connected to an urban planning project? So here you are. We tackle different themes, a variety of topics, and as I said, we do not want to replace the media. We're here to share information. We want the reader to be able to source information or to check our partner website. It is a crucial point. It is crucial for us because we want our partners and public partners to the opportunity to engage with the public. We want them to have the opportunity to showcase their work. Unfortunately, I cannot show you all the contents I had prepared on my computer, but we have a study about counting migratory birds on the coastline, and this study has been supported by the SPO data. We have another study about the notion of One Health, that is this globalized vision of health that was so there was a link between One Health and biodiversity, and we talked about that within in a seminar. So many different actors can take part, can be on our website. So we want to share information in different formats in order to attract different audiences and enable people to keep on exploring our website. Here's another example about circular economy. So the page is centered around a figure, and we also provide the sources of information. Next example. So this page talks about sustainable tourism. Our target here is to answer a question. We all want to go on holidays, right? So how can you go on holidays and respect the environment? How can you access sustainable tourism? Well, this page explains what sustainable tourism is and offers you links that will redirect you to a map that gathers the accommodation, the eco accommodation available. So on this page you can find very useful information and also practical information. So the reader can, if you want to do something about biodiversity, then you can check our website and you'll know what to do or who to turn to. And we will make everything we can to make this website more accessible and more attractive to the wider public. So I've mentioned different formats. There's another format I haven't shown you, and this format aims to showcase topics by different resources. So you can find different files, and in each file you will find all studies and reports available on the relevant topics. So there will be different studies and reports so that you can have a wide array of information about the relevant topic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I must say I am sorry we couldn't make a better presentation of the website, but that you can check the website yourselves from your own devices. To sum up, we know that environmental challenges are complex and everybody needs more information. That's why we need pathways tailored to everybody's needs and level of information. Secondly, there's so much information available, so it is quite difficult to know what's wrong and what's false, what's true. So our portal wants to be a reference so that participants and readers can get true information. And finally, our main target is to keep on developing the website. We want this website to grow and to bring more information to the public. It already provides the public with a lot of information, and what it says is that here are the challenges, here's what's at stake, and here's what you can do. And now that we have heard Nathalie's presentation, we can launch a discussion. So there will be 4 speakers or 3 speakers actually, because one of them will be online. So here's my first guest, Mr. Bougrain-Dubourg, Nicolas Furet, the Director General of CTO, a company. You've certainly heard about it. It is specialized in the waste management sector. Isabelle Simon, she is the regional delegate of Altis France BFM. So I would like to thank the speakers. We have a 4th speaker online, Mr. Duval, the delegate of the Alpes-Maritimes. And as we know, is really committed to environment. However, I am not sure we will be able to speak with him live. So to start with, I will give the floor to our first 3 guests. So what are your reactions? Oh, I see Mr. Duval is here along with us. Can you hear me? Mr. Duval, can we hear you?
Je vous entends très bien de mon côté.
I can hear you very well. And we hear you too. This is a miracle, the miracle of technology. So we'll start with you. And I will ask the same questions to all 4 speakers. So what do you think about this presentation, about these ambitions? You face different challenges, work challenges, institutional challenges, and do you think that the portal can help you face these challenges in your own context? So,
comme vous voulez.
Over to you, Mr. Duval.
Très bien, écoutez, merci. Quelques instants pour prendre la parole. D'abord pour vous remercier.
Thank you very much. Let me take the time to thank Madam Minister Barbara, to thank Bérangère, the Secretary of State, and you all for inviting me to speak.
Dieu sait si cela manque. We
need more figures, more facts to have an opinion on every topic, especially environment. We need figures to be able to take our decisions and carry out sound policies. When we see these figures, we realize that there are issues with social media. There's a lot of lies circulating. There are many fake news, and if you browse the internet, and even if you get a checked fact, there will always be those who will say it's untrue. So
Donc bravo pour ce portail d'information environnementale, de transition écologique, de biodiversité. C'est un grand travail à faire d'explication des mécanismes qui sont particulièrement complexes, qui sont à l'œuvre sur ces questions. Et les citoyens, quels qu'ils soient, ils peuvent s'approprier tous ces sujets, même les plus complexes, si on fait œuvre de facilité, de mettre en pédagogie. Voilà. On l'a vu par exemple dans le Grenelle de l'environnement, où il a fallu quelques semaines à des gens, à des citoyens français qui n'étaient pas des spécialistes des questions environnementales, eh bien, en s'appropriant avec passion ces sujets, en étant enseignés par des gens de grande qualité, eh bien, en quelques semaines devenir des experts à un sujet. Voilà. Alors les écueils, c'est évidemment cette faire une leçon, trop simpliste, même s'il faut être simple, il faut être précis, il faut être factuel, il faut être argumenté et sourcé. Et ce nouveau site, moi il me semble, j'ai été le voir bien sûr, avant qu'il soit présenté aujourd'hui, il me semble qu'il remplit tous ces critères. Dans le monde cette semaine, il y avait un grand océanographe français, François Sarano, qui disait on connaît tous les Pokémon,
Someone said, we know every Pokemon, but there are very simple things we cannot recognize, so it is our responsibility to disseminate information on this topic and to reconnect with nature and living creatures. It is our responsibility, it is essential for all topics connected to environment, especially for on the topic of animal well-being. C'est the more we know about animals and biology, the more we'll be able to protect them.
Je vais vous donner un exemple de fiche que je trouve particulièrement bien faite.
You have provided us with different examples of data sheets, and this shows that this portal is a quality tool. So you mentioned the One Health program, so there will be talks about One Health. We'll talk about One Health during this Congress. I've supported this program ever since I was elected, and we want France to take a leading role. So One Health is making a connection between health, animals, and biodiversity and environment. So if you damage one of these links, you will damage everything.
Et on en a un exemple majeur, dramatique avec la crise de la
Not enough awareness about this program, not enough people know this program.
Elle épuise des ressources et de la faune sauvage.
We keep on depleting resources.
Pour remédier à cela, ce site propose des clés
So this
pour décrypter ce sujet,
can provide us with solutions to make our own opinions. There are very useful data sheets. There are many complex, biological complex explained, and this
bon, je ne vais pas vous résumer tout le site, je vous laisse le découvrir par vous-même. Et quand je dis vous, je m'adresse aussi bien à
food and animal well-being. So I'll stop here because I want my fellow speakers to have enough time. So when you talked about citizens, but this portal also addresses a younger audience, and it is crucial we reinforce education.
Une plus grande place sur ces sujets dans les programmes scolaires. C'est une excellente chose. Il y a aussi une mesure dont on n'a pas forcément beaucoup parlé, qui est importante, mais qui est très intéressante, c'est la création des éco-délégués. Là, on parle aux plus jeunes, dans les classes des collèges,
there's also a new concept. It is about creating, electing eco-representative classes at school.
Et ce travail de long terme, il est essentiel.
So there's long-term work being carried out.
Le développement durable, il devrait systématiquement et prioritairement irriguer et déterminer nos politiques publiques, quelles qu'elles soient. Donc voilà, j'en ai fini. Bravo à toutes les équipes qui ont créé ce portail.
So I am done with my speech. I am convinced that this portal will soon become a reference. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to the MP there. It's really important for us to hear from an MP. He's had some very interesting things to say and contribute to this very complex debate. And I'm glad to hear his positive comments. Now I'm going to turn to Nicolas Furet. You work for a company. Do you think this website has any specific value to add? Is it useful? Just letting my microphone warm up. Well, thank you for the question. At Citeo, my company, we've been working on prevention and managing packaging and household waste. And before taking a decision, any company needs facts that can be checked. We need data. It really is important for us to have access to reliable data that we also can check ourselves and that is traceable also. The interesting thing with this website is that the data is free of access, and that makes things so very different, because not only do we have access to data, everybody has access to that data. And so it's a real advance in terms of, I'm just looking for my word, transparency. Yes, of course, it's very transparent, and it's very innovative also. And all of this data is opened up to all kinds of businesses or potential entrepreneurs when they realize what's at stake. And once they have access to the data, they might come up with some wonderful ideas. So it's great for society. So I would like to thank the Sustainable Development Ministry for coming up with it. We are sure that this kind of open website will really trigger a lot of exciting projects and initiatives. And I'd also like to say that we at our company are really committed to defending biodiversity. And I think this website is the first stone in a huge edifice, if you like, to build up the knowledge that we don't have at our disposal. We need it in order to launch public and private initiatives so that we can coordinate our efforts to protect biodiversity. Yes, we have high hopes for this website. It's great that it's on free access, and we are sure that businesses and associations and public authorities will be inspired to launch projects, thanks to all the information at their disposal. Yes, thank you for encouraging us to go even further. It's something we really must stress. There's a portal, a website, the OFB has launched its own website, of course. And so if you want to go directly to that website, then you can. We've got lots of search engines which will help us on that score, but it's really also important for those who don't know about the OFB can have this kind of entry point, a broad entry point, which will then direct the internet user to the OFB or to another website. And so thank you very much for inviting us to go even further. Isabelle Simon, you work for a media company. It's a business, of course, a rather unique business model, really, because the media are very strong. You have a strong link with the public. Well, we've got two types of responsibility. We've got the responsibility that any man or woman has to contribute to protecting the wonderful natural spaces, the nature areas that we have here in France. And we also have another responsibility, and that is to shed light on and explain some critical issues. If you compare the importance of these subjects and the number of reports and articles that have been released, well, there is still a gap. The subjects are so important. I think they deserve to be written about more, and they need to be showcased more, but they are very difficult subjects. And very often you need to find data, you need to hear what experts and scientists have to say about it before you can understand what's going on. We need to have figures, track records. We need to know what the trends are, what the trends have been over decades, for example. And these sources of information grouped all together under one roof, a bit like a directory, if you like. it would be a useful tool even for journalists and for the media, because we do have specialist journalists who specialize in biodiversity, for example, but there are many general journalists. At our company, BFM, we've got hundreds of journalists. Even in the South region, we've got about 100 or so who are working here in the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region, and they perhaps don't know everything about every subject, and so it will be a useful resource for them to dip into. So one can only commend this initiative. It can only be a good thing to put information and sources to make them available to everyone. I think one of the ministers mentioned earlier on reintroducing wild vultures back into the Provence region. And if you want to find out more about that, then you know where to go. There's quite a lot of information about that project. So well done for this initiative. Well done. Thank you very much for those kind words, that feedback. We are delighted that the portal is making everyone's job easier. But we do also need specialists and those who have devoted their lives to a cause. I'm looking towards Alain Bougrain-Dubourg, who's at the head of the Society for the Prevention of Birds here in France. So we've saved you for the end of our round table. Perhaps you can give us your reaction. You had a quick look at the website there with everybody else here. We didn't manage to connect live to it, but we'd really like to hear what you have to say about the work which we've carried out. And the work will continue, we'll make progress. If you have any input, then we're all ears. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you to ask for my testimonial. It was great to listen to Barbara Pompoli and to listen to you. It was great to look at the website. In fact, I've looked at it on my mobile phone as well. And Nelson Mandela once said that the most powerful weapon we have to change the world is education. And that is so true. Let's get the message across. And we often find ourselves confronted by several different situations. First of all, there can be messages which are contradictory or which don't necessarily say the same thing, and which make it rather difficult to interpret the situation. So I'm wondering, in your project, might it be useful to have, I know we're creating committees left, right and centre, but might it not be useful to have a committee that validates the data, and so that we can be sure that when you go onto your website that any data that's on the website has been approved by your committee, and you just can therefore have no doubts. I think it could be useful, and it would promote your website even higher. So how much information are we talking about? I was listening to the presentation. You were saying you had some data that dates back to 2018. That's not very long. If I'm a journalist and if someone asked me to write an article and back it up with historical context, I wouldn't dare offer the date of 2018. I have to go much further back in time than that. I know it's difficult. But you've asked me to cast a critical eye on your website, so hopefully I'm being helpful here. Here we are at the World IUCN Congress. Have you mentioned that there are 17 species that continue to be hunted in France, but which are nevertheless on the IUCN red list? Have you pointed that out, or have you just swept that under the carpet? It's very interesting to know how far we're going to go in providing the information. Okay, what I'm saying is a fact. I'm not being a militant here. No, I'm just telling the truth here. So I think there are many open questions. Another question springs to mind, but you've already brushed upon this. What about the Natural History Museum's website or the OFP site and other websites? Are you going to how are you going to position yourself in relation to all the others? Of course, the other websites have to keep their own identity. Perhaps they might even go further in their work. But I think it's necessary to take a stance. But associations such as the Society for the Prevention of Birds, I can't speak for the others, but we are all very enthusiastic about this kind of approach. And we will help you, we'll be by your side. I think there's a lot being done. We have learnt a lot from great naturalists in the past, French naturalists, but they but the English language, the English-speaking world seems to have taken over. So it's good to see the French come back. The English have got to their whale watching stuff, but we're catching up with them then. The stock program, which we saw earlier on about birds with the Natural History Museum, thanks to that, we've got 50,000 contributors. These are people who have adhered to very strict protocols and are enriching the databases. And when we set up an operation, which was a bit of a quip at the time, we had the teams from the Society for the Prevention of Birds who set something up which is called "We may be in lockdown, but our eyes are open." So for some people who were in lockdown at home, perhaps had a balcony or they had a garden, they decided to observe the garden or the balcony and come back to the Society for the Protection of Birds and report on the birds that they'd seen, record the bird song, just get back in touch with nature. There were over 1.5 million pieces of data which were contributed after those lockdown periods. So people were so very enthusiastic, and that shows that there is demand and that the citizens can participate as well. So respect, I certainly admire all the work that you've carried out. And it was difficult for you to make your presentation, I'm sure, but it's all been done. It's a fine baby. It will grow strong, and let's feed it the best milk we can find.
Thank you very much, Alain, for being encouraging and for sharing your demands, as we'll take them into account. So when we work along with our partners, they are mobilized. They'll be even more mobilized now that they can showcase what they do. So we need fresh data, but reliable data that is reliable. But we need time to publish them. So that's why when we publish them, they're a little less new. So we need to strike a balance. I think you conveyed the main message here. Sorry for interrupting, but for example, when you publish data from 2018 and you don't have newer data, then everybody knows, because so that journalists know and they don't go looking forward more recent data. Thank you very much for your points of view, for being here, for being available. Thank you all, dear participants. Please feel free to take a look at the website. Feel free to follow our LinkedIn account. For the website notre-environnement.gouv.fr. Thank you, everyone.